It's Jeff Braidlove with the American Addiction Recovery Association in conversation with Andy Gish with the Georgia Overdose Prevention. Andy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Georgia Overdose Prevention, we'll get into deep today, but right now, introduce Andy to us. Andy, the person, tell us a little about Andy's and her journey, and then introduce us to Georgia Overdose Prevention.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Andy Gish. I am, first, I identify as an artist and musician, also a scientist and nurse. And I come to overdose prevention through my own grief from losing my own people. Um, I was an ER nurse for 15 years and a nurse. I've been a nurse for 20 years, and I got to see the opioid epidemic happen in front of me. And I needed a place and a way to be able to deal with my own grief of losing people in my neighborhood, people in my life, having friends and family still at risk. And in 2014, I found the organization Georgia Overdose Prevention, who'd been around since 2012. They'd come together, again, all people with skin in the game, with shared grief and shared risks. And they were putting together a medical amnesty law. And I came in kind of on the tail end of that when they were going to the Georgia legislature to pass it. And I said, what can I do? Thinking that I was, I'm very small peas, right? I was an ER nurse. I felt like I was pretty skilled, but like I had no idea what policy was about. I don't know if I'd ever been to the Capitol before. It was very intimidating. And they said, have you given naloxone before? Which is the same thing as Narcan. It's a life-saving antidote to an overdose. And I said, oh, yeah. I mean, more times than I could count. And they said, can you come and testify about that and the safety and how you need it? And so I showed up one day. Originally, I thought I would gather my coworkers and some doctors that I worked with and said, I read through this law and it sounds like it would really make our lives easier. And in my head, I thought, oh, I'm going to bring a bunch of people. And no one else wanted to do it. I think it was still too stigmatizing. And then I was like, is this just going to be me? Like I did not anticipate it was just going to be me as the nurse. I mean, it wasn't just me. There were plenty of people with Georgia Overdose Prevention showing up with their kids for months advocating for this law. But like from my little niche of the ER, I was like, am I the only person that's going to do this? And I did. Shaky hands and probably didn't explain myself very well. But my standpoint was we need more to work with. And right now we're getting people who are intubated and we're losing everybody. And if they had naloxone given to them by their family or their friends, whoever was next to them, then we would have a lot more to work with. And I'd rather a patient come in arguing with me than intubated. And, I look at this because, I mean, I've had friends that were left. I know they were left. I don't even blame the people that left them because it was a very different perspective or different situation back then. So it was a lot about me. But Georgia Overdose Prevention has been around since 2012. They came together again, like I said, through shared grief to pass the medical amnesty law. Don't run, call 911. Our main co-founders that were running the organization for the first 11 years, I guess. Gosh, were Lori Fugit and Robin Elliott. And I was a volunteer with that organization from that time in 2014. And then 2 years ago, they retired and I took over as executive director. And what we do is we educate people about the medical amnesty law. Don't run, call 911. The caller and the victim are protected from possession charges and from paraphernalia. And then we educate people on how to recognize and respond to an overdose all over Georgia in every little niche. We have over 100 volunteers. They all serve their unique communities. And I think that that's really why we've been very successful. Everyone who volunteers for this organization has lost someone or has someone at risk or has been at risk themselves. It's a lot of information. Sorry.
No, it's amazing. I mean, this is a great interview, a privilege for me, but I'm going to have to take I'm such a huge fan of the work that the Georgia Overdose Prevention does that I've got I got to not sound like a fan and sound, dispassionate a little bit, but I have said publicly, in front of you and not in front of you, that as someone whose my journey took me 30 years as an adult, 20 to 50 in policy and politics and government, I've seen a lot of organizations and great ones, and they do great things and all kinds of issues that have nothing to do with this issue, transportation and the environment and stuff, sports and whatever they are. But I don't know that I've seen one organization that saved as many lives as Georgia Overdose Prevention. I think that case could be made, and even if you want to, split hairs over it, clearly, it's a leader in the state of Georgia and clearly in the southeastern nation of being on the front lines in communities. And we're gonna kind of maybe segue right into that. But I do want to acknowledge that Robin and Laurie, in particular, the two of them, they are living legends, and they did take grief and tragedy and turn it into triumph in the sense that they helped other families. And of course, I just know Representative Sharon Cooper. I've known her for a very long time, and they got involved with Sharon Cooper, and they lived out loud, citizens advocating for something with stigma around it, a decade ago plus. And it was just in 2025 that there was the celebration ceremony on the floor of the House of Representatives celebrating the anniversary of the Don't Run Call 911 law. And uh, congratulations to them, to every person that's ever worked for or volunteered for or shown up for uh, Georgia Overdose Prevention. And then congratulations to you from starting as a volunteer. What'd you say, with shaky hands and not so sure what you were doing?
Yep.
Uh, Intimidated at your first Capitol visit to now, and it's okay to be a leader. And now you're running with, I'm sure, a servant's heart, this organization professionally, and the work y'all do is great. But let's talk about that work you do. Let's start in the community.
Mhm.
So, Georgia, and by the way, it's a national podcast. There'll be people in other states that go, "Oh my gosh, I wish we had a Georgia overdose prevention in our state." I'm sure there'll be some states that go, "Oh, that's like our group here." So there'll be, I'm sure, both extremes. But Georgia is the biggest state east of Mississippi River, land wise, not population wise, but land wise, and it's got 159 counties. And people from other states don't seem to understand that each of those counties is its own government, and there's its own set of rules and culture, also not laws, but just culture. So it's a lot of places to go to. And we are predominantly an agriculture state. We are mostly a rural state. Atlanta's famous, but it's not the biggest part of our state. You've begun, of course, you've done historic work, and I live in urban Atlanta, right in the heart of downtown Atlanta. So that's my community. But let's talk about rural Georgia first. You've been going recently into places in extreme rural Georgia, where literally they might have one or two red lights in the county seat. Not because you thought it was a great idea, but because the communities have asked you to come in. They've invited you to come in, and you know how to listen to communities. Tell us why they're asking you to come in, what they're asking you to do, and what's going on in these rural communities.
Yeah, I think that most of my time is actually spent out of Metro Atlanta, and it's because, I mean, so much of what we do is educate and fight stigma and fear, right? Because stigma and fear, in my opinion, is really what kills people. When people use alone, when people don't share their risks, is when they're most at risk. Um, so I feel like that's really a place where you can do a lot of good work fast. And also, we've already been in those areas. We have, like I said, over 100 volunteers in all of the small areas, and they can tell us or get us in touch with the people who know what we need to do there. I mean, what I've learned is, yes, every county is very different. And each of them have different needs, each of them have different risks. And like, just to give you, an example, in Carrollton, where we're doing a lot of work right now, the Carrollton numbers were very high. We also have distributed a lot through the mail to individuals in Carrollton. Um, And it's people saving themselves. Like, it's literally people who use drugs, people in recovery, friends and family saving themselves. Um, so in that area, it's a very different situation than another place where, like, recently in Augusta, you have community leaders who are also peers who are really doing the work. So the work is coming from them out rather than, from these individuals in their homes. So every county is different. Um, we are an organization that goes where the fire is. Like, we can't wait for, I mean, I appreciate that there's CDC data to show that what we're doing is working, right? But that comes out a year, 2 years, maybe longer. And this is a work of immediacy and a work of crisis. So we're like, where's the fire? So we're dealing with a lot of folks that we've already built. We've spent 10 years building trust with the community of people most at risk. Because that's the only people we serve. Um, and so they'll tell us, like, we just installed a 24-hour box in Carrollton. That was placed by a community member at risk who saved 7 people, who said, "This is the place, and I've already actually talked to the owner of the gas station. Can you help, us get a box there?" So, I think that, part of our success in saving a lot of people, and I can give you those numbers later, remind me, but, is that we're listening to the people most at risk, and every county is different. I have to relearn. What we did in Augusta, we started last year because they needed a lot of help, and we've s this year we saved 700% more people than the year before in the Augusta, Richmond, and Columbia counties. So that's worked. But when I took that to Chatham County, which was our second focus in the last year, I knew I was going to have to tweak it, and I definitely had to tweak it because it's totally different there. So,
No, that is true. And I love what you said about you go to the fire.
yep.
And that is true. I mean, I love policy, and it's great to go to the Capitol or the county commission, city hall, and talk about policy. And policy saves lives. It has its place in the equation. But Georgia overdose prevention doesn't wait for that. They're proactive, and y'all go in on the front end, and that's where lives are saved on the front end. And tell me why, if someone's listening, let me put it this way. If someone's listening to this podcast, and again, it's nationwide, so they could be in any state, and they're a community leader of any type. Maybe they're an elected official, maybe they work for an elected official, maybe they are a business leader in their chamber of commerce, maybe they're a law enforcement education leader, whatever they are, Rotary Club president. Why should they want a group to come in and educate the community? And let's be blunt, maybe put up a box with Narcan in it. Why is that good for a community and not stigmatizing? Because that's the question you're going to get asked. Doesn't this just make drugs accessible to everybody?
Right.
How do you respond to the legitimate question of why is good for our community to do this?
I mean, the community needs to take care of itself. Nobody needs to have another community member die, right? Like, no one needs that. Um, you know, does naloxone just doesn't increase drug use. Nobody wants it. I mean, it causes withdrawal symptoms. So if someone's using, opiates regularly, then they're not going to want it. It's the first thing you can do is, like, come across somebody who's, like, nodding off and you're worried about them and you say, "I'm going to give you some Narcan." And they'll be like, "Oh no." So there's a lot of, like, misinformation about enabling, and that's why we take, very much a more harm reduction approach, in that we're asking communities what they need and people what they need. And, like, what I'd say to, you know, whatever counties or cities that were looking, like, to help their communities, um, is to listen to the community. Otherwise, you're, like, really spending probably a lot of time and money, like, throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? So, um, if you listen to the people at risk, if you build that trust with them, they will tell you what what they need, and they will tell you where the services need to be focused. And I think that that's something that we've always done because I mean, we were founded by the right people for that situation. Um, and Jeremy Galloway was one of our co-founders and was definitely a believer in the nothing for us without us. And I mean, that stays close in my mind all the time. I think about him frequently and think, okay, that's, what do people need? Like, not what do I think they need?
Um, So let's talk about those numbers you referenced earlier, because the numbers are staggering. I mean, I want you to give the specifics, but this is kind of what I say. I say the addiction epidemic is the number one domestic policy issue for every type of stakeholder, because the number one cause of death for Americans 18 to 45 is overdose and fentanyl poisoning. But the numbers, I mean, beyond 18 to 45, and especially in there, give us some examples, because maybe I'm, again, a stakeholder, maybe I'm a family member. Heck, maybe I'm a person in active addiction and I don't understand. We're talking some pretty big numbers here.
I mean, yeah, if you're talking about the people that we have served, people that
Right,
we have saved,
right.
in total, I just calculated it while we were talking. We have saved 14,188 people that we know of.
I
That's
mean, let's hold on. 14,188.
188. Yeah.
Now
And
that's one organization, a leader, but one organization in one state. What's that time frame for that?
that's since we started distributing naloxone, so 2014. So
Since 2014. Now I'm really bad at math. Really, seriously.
yeah.
But just conversationally speaking, I mean, maybe not literally, obviously, but from a conversation point of view, that's 14,188 people that are alive today because Georgia overdose prevention was going to where the fires were and breaking down stigma with education. And then I guess ultimately a product called Narcan and maybe some other testing strips or whatnot, to say it's okay to have this type of help.
Okay.
14,188.
Yeah.
It could be anybody's 14,188.
Absolutely. And those are just the people that reported back to us. We know it's far, far more than that.
Sure.
The fact that people report back to us tells me that people trust this organization, just like I did as a volunteer. I trusted them to offer my time, sometimes more hours than I was working. And so it's very effective, I think, because of who we are and where we come from. And I mean, uh, it's very clear to me that the heroes of that story, the heroes of the 14,000 people. I mean, it's not me. I haven't saved a person since I left the ER. Okay. So it's not me. It's not, it's not EMS. I mean, EMS and police are saving their own, saving people as well. But this is people, this 14,000 are people saving their friends, their families, strangers. Like, empowering them is how you get through, because you have to have the person beside them, who's going to, or the person in the home that's going to be able to save them. And I think that that's truly why we've been so successful. And like, just in the last year, so in the last 12 months, I just did our numbers for that. We saved 2,209 people. That's 6 people a day. 6 people a day. Now, it's not, sometimes I get a report and it's from a year ago, or you know what I mean, something like that. It's not like 6 people every day, but it's on average 6 people.
On average, right. Let me ask you this. There's people that will tune into this podcast that are 2 different audiences, and I want you to speak to each audience separately for a minute. So the first audience, in no particular order, a family member. The person is a family member,
Mm-hmm.
but they know their loved one, spouse, child, sibling, whatever, immediate, right in family member is out there involved in some type of drugs, any type of whatever it is. They've heard about this Narcan stuff, but they're not sure about it. It's $44 on the shelf at Walmart or Kroger, or the grocery store in their community. I can start naming Safeways and other store Aldi's around the country to show I know grocery stores around the country, but whatever the grocery store is, It's roughly $40, give or take. And that's hard sometimes in the economy, and they don't always have time to go get the free one at the event. They know there's events, but what do you say to the family member that's more concerned than the price about, if I hand this to my loved one, it's only going to make them feel like they can do drugs more. So I'm not going to give them Narcan because then maybe they won't do drugs.
Well, our experience is that that's not the case at all, right? And the whole thing is people don't recover if they're dead. So, and I think that if you talk to any parent who has been, with us on this journey, they would say however many chances it takes. There's just no sense. There's just no, you know what I mean? You wouldn't do that if someone was having a, you know, diabetic issue from sugar, right? You wouldn't do that if someone was having a heart attack. If someone isn't breathing, all naloxone is going to do is going to restore breathing. What happens from there is dependent on their supports, dependent on what they want to do. And that's where you guys help come in, right? So people, they're having a recovery community around people, and being able to talk about this openly helps tremendously. So
And you might say the same thing to a person in active addiction, but I was pleased, I was honored to find out that a lot of the listeners are people still in active addiction, maybe seeking the concept of recovery. And maybe the message is exactly the same, maybe there's different nuance, but you're out there, different patterns of usage, of course, for different people, but just holistically, maybe the person is afraid that they've been keeping a secret, and that if somebody sees a little Narcan pouch or packet, that people, oh, they're doing drugs. What do you say to that person who's
I say,
putting
no,
their
that person's
secrecy?
probably the hero. Like, if people say to me, oh, well, I don't use anymore. I don't need that. I'm like, yeah, but it's not for, you can't give it to yourself. So it's for, would you recognize someone if they were overdosing? Would you want to help? This is for you to be the hero. I think that having it be over the counter now, the nasal spray version is over the counter now, which I think that helps a lot, to destigmatize it. Anybody can be a hero with it. I mean, I trained a 14-year-old and she saved a stranger at a gas station. Anybody can be a hero in that situation. And, our organization exists so that we can equip the people closest to, so there's people at risk and the families. And we give it for free in that situation, and especially if they can't afford it. We don't want that to ever be the case, but we know it's expensive. This is one of the reasons why we give out both intermuscular and nasal naloxone. Nasal naloxone is great. It's easy to use, but it's very high dose and it can cause worse withdrawals according to the people that we serve. And intermuscular naloxone is purchased at cost. And it's what most people who have been reversed prefer that we serve as well. So we give out both, and it helps us also to create that saturation to really get as many out there as possible.
Right, right. Now, as we go forward on policy, let's talk a little bit about policy for a minute. There's always debates about, well, first of all, there's debates, and Georgia Overdose Prevention has been a true leader, at least in Georgia for sure, and I'm sure that's translated to other states, on decriminalization of testing, broadly speaking, testing strips for products. I mean, that's important too. It's not just Narcan. It's legitimate harm reduction, life. But you can call it harm reduction all you want. It's life saving, is what it is. Tools that, if a person's in possession of them, you don't want a law enforcement officer to be uneducated and not know that that's not a tool to use drugs. That's a tool to save your life.
Yeah.
In a crisis. So it's not just getting Narcan into places that's policy, and it's not just legislation to legalize things like testing strips. It comes down to a stigma around funding for organizations themselves, for the education programs, to create a program legally where you can travel from Atlanta, Georgia to Waycross, Georgia, or Boise, Idaho to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Buffalo, New York to Queens, New York, long distances. You got to have programs that are legal out there that provide funding for people to go to communities, do education. Why is it so important to you that both governments with taxpayer dollars and businesses with their charitable giving dollars invest in the type of work that Georgia Overdose Prevention does? What's what's in it for them? What are they doing when they invest in these types of programs?
I mean, if you're just looking at from a business standpoint, it costs a lot more money for someone to go to the ER and or for to treat a fatal overdose than it does to save them. I mean, you're talking about whatever $350 to $40, right? Say that's what it costs to administer naloxone. Throw some test strips in there. That's another maybe couple dollars. Um, and if somebody tests something and finds that there's something in there they're not expecting, then they're probably not going to use. So you're not even going to have to use the naloxone, right? So, I mean, just from that standpoint, if you're looking at how businesses should think, I mean, this is a very effective work. This is very effective work, and you see it with the numbers going down. But um, you know, but also when you talk about test strips, so test strips are legal, or all drug testing is legal in Georgia. um, you have to the illicit supply is changing all of the time so much that we have tons of scientists out there testing stuff, but we also need that connection to the people out there that are using the drugs so that we know what's out there. And that's the whole thing about saving themselves. And just you buy maybe organic celery, right? People should be able to know what they're ingesting, and they're 5 times more likely to change their behavior. This is shown through research if they test something and find something they're not expecting. So, and I've seen it happen in front of me where someone had tested what they took was fentanyl. They didn't know it. It came positive through a test, and they were like bawling, crying because it was their biggest fear, right? So, it can create that change, and it can reduce the harm in their life. And it's really the lowest part of the testing strips are the lowest part of any budget item, usually anyway. Budget.
No, absolutely. And Georgia is, to talk in just terms of politics and policy for a minute. CNN and Fox, they both, MSNBC, they all use common for red state, blue state. That's just how you talk about things. And Georgia's considered a red state, right? Which means it's kind of conservative. And testing strips are legal. In fact, not only they're legal, there's been multiple pieces of legislation, and not to get too deep in the woods or wonkish, but the most recent piece fixed it where we didn't have to come back every time there was an adulteration, which is really cool and good policy.
Smart.
And maybe you're viewing this podcast, in another red state, and you're, I don't know that they'd go for that here. Or maybe it's a blue state and you're wondering, why don't they have that here? And, to me, well, I don't want to say what it is to me. What I want to ask you is, what's your message to an elected official, whether they're right of center conservative or left of center progressive, that currently has not had a piece of legislation introduced, certainly not that's passed, that legalizes testing strips for anything and everything, any of the common drugs out there? What's your 1-minute elevator speech on why they should vote for that? Why that's not pro drug, why that is, if you will, pro family or pro life or pro faith?
So I would go back to that. People are 5 times more likely to change their behavior if they find something in there that isn't supposed to be in there. Plus, or opiate supply is in all kinds of things now. So if someone for instance, uses methamphetamines and they find that there's fentanyl in there, it's going to have them make very different decisions, perhaps. So I think that that's definitely one way. Another way is it's not something that's a huge expense, right? And again, I mean, if you have an organization where people report back, you're going to get data that's useful to that state and to prevention in the future of other overdoses. Um, So, I mean, that's what I would say probably, uh, people are more likely to change their behavior if they find something in there that isn't supposed to be in there or that they don't think is
No.
in there.
Well, absolutely. Well, we have just a few moments left. Andy Gish, Georgia Overdose Prevention. How do people find Georgia Overdose Prevention on social media?
Yeah, they can go to georgiaoverdoseprevention.org on just our website. They can go to, we're on Facebook and Instagram under the same names. If you're in Georgia and you know somebody at risk or you are somebody at risk, you can get free supplies from us, especially if you can't afford it. If you've reversed somebody with one of our kits, please let us know. We keep track of that. Every life saved means a lot to us because we've all lost our own people.
Well, I encourage everybody to follow Georgia Overdose Prevention on social media. Uh, they really do save lives every day. They really are on the front lines. And if you don't have a similar group in your state, reach out to them. I'm sure Andy would talk to you about how to get going in your state. Andy, this is Jeff Breedlove with the American Addiction Recovery Association in conversation with Andy Gish at Georgia Overdose Prevention. And Andy, we always tell everybody that recovery is real.
Thank you.